On yet another special day. It's really a special week. The whole thing has ended up being about Willie Mays in many different ways, shapes, and forms, and that's another reason why we're really looking forward to this conversation and allow us to introduce our next guest to you. His name is Gary Shemano. I think a better way to say it, though, is Gary and his family once called by Willie Mays the best friends I ever had. So, Gary, welcome to Willard and Dibs and 95.7 The Game. And the first thing I want to do is offer you condolences on the loss of your very, very close friend.
I get very emotional. Excuse me.
It's okay.
Yeah, I accept that. It was a difficult time and is, but time heals all wounds, as they say.
It would be great, I think, for our audience to understand how you and your family came together with Willie. How did that all start?
Well, I attended Lowell High School in San Francisco, and when the Giants moved to San Francisco, as something for the community, they invited certain kids from high school to come out and work out with the team prior to the game, during batting practice, etc. And I was a pitcher anyway. I got a call to come out, and my family had season tickets at Candlestick. And so I went out there, and Bill Rigney was the manager. He says, can you pitch? I said, yeah. He says, well, get out there on the mound, pitch batting practice to these guys. Let them hit it. Don't throw it in with any speed. Don't prove anything. And I'm thinking to myself, my buddies are sitting in the stands. They all know I'm pitching the batting practice, and I can't lob it in. I thought I had a pretty good curve and knuckleball. And anyway, so I'm up pitching, and, at the time there was Willie and Orlando and McCovey and the Alou boys. And, it was a gang. And I'm pitching, and I'm throwing, my speed was 65 miles an hour. And that's like lobbing it into these guys. Anyway, so I'm throwing it as hard as I can, and they are killing it. In fact, McCovey was up prior to building the stands in the right field. There was just a scoreboard. And I threw Willie a knuckleball, Willie McCovey. He hit it so hard, he bounced it off the scoreboard in right field. Rigney comes out of the dugout, pats me on the tush, and says, okay, go shag some flies.
So that session was over.
So then after that, we went into the locker room prior to the game, and I'm there. My dad had a very dear friend named Jefferson Beaver, who had his own little savings and loan in San Francisco. My dad had put him on the board of a bank that my father formed called Golden Gate National Bank in San Francisco. So he went down with Jefferson. Jefferson knew Willie. And so they go in the locker room, and I will tell you the truth. The only guys that was nice to me in the locker room, they thought I was an intruder, was Willie Mays. I mean, I can remember Tom Haller just was a bad guy to me. But in any event, I sat with Willie and talked with him. He was so great. And then my dad came in with Jefferson, and they started to talk. And Jefferson said to Willie, Willie, given your situation, I think you ought to get together with Jake, see what you guys can do. Long story short, they met. Willie was not in good shape financially and was going through a very difficult time personally. And my dad said to Willie, look, I'll help you. I'll get involved. I'll negotiate your contract with Horace Stoneham, and I'm not going to charge you a dime, and then don't ever bring it up again. That's how it all started.
Gary Shemano, good friend of Willie Mays for the majority of Gary's life and a long time for Willie Mays, joins us here on 95.7 The Game. Can you give us a little bit more background on just that financial recuperation that your family and the bank was able to do for Willie Mays?
Yeah. Willie, like most people today, spent everything they made, and he was levered up. And so when my dad said to Willie, "You're on now a budget," and he negotiated the contract with Horace. Can you believe this? $61 or $100,000 for Willie, and he was on a budget every month. The bills all came to the bank, and they paid, and that was the beginning of Willie recouping.
Gary, can you give us a sense of what this developed into just inside your home through the years? Because the understanding is that it became normalcy, that Willie was around.
Willie, during a difficult time for a very short period, lived with us. We lived in Seacliff, and so he would hang out, and he'd come over to the house, and we'd have dinner. He loved to play gin, my dad too, and he had a Cadillac that said "Say Hey 24" in the license. And so when he was at the house, parked out in front, the entire neighborhood of all the kids knew that, hey, Mays is over at Shemano's house. So they all came over, and Willie went out in the street, played catch with everybody, and he became a member of the family. And it's interesting because Willie was introduced to a lot of things that he had never experienced before. We were a dedicated Jewish family, and Willie kind of embraced that. And I can tell you, every function that whatever the family had or whatever charitable event the family was going to, Willie went with my dad, and they were kind of like a twosome at these events. And Willie really developed a panache to be able to talk with people, socialize, never said no to anybody for an autograph at any event. Like on Thanksgiving, Willie would come over at the house. We had a big Thanksgiving every year, and the only difficult time he had at my house was my mother, who worked for a week on the Turkey Day spread, went to Willie and said, "Willie, I want you to try this." And it was bagel and lox. And so he took a bite of it, couldn't swallow the smoked salmon. And so he threw up. And it was so funny. Everybody felt bad for him, but I was laughing because a lot of people can't eat that, But, and then he just, we went out to every game and we watched it. When my dad's mother passed away, Willie did not like funerals. I'll be interested to see what happens. Willie did not want to go to a funeral ever. And when my grandmother passed away, a few days after, a week after, he called and he said, "Dad," he said, "Jake, what can I do for your grandma?" And he said, "Nothing. She's in a better place." He said, "Are you going to the game tonight?" And my dad said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I'm going to try to do something." I'll never forget it.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Quite all right, Gary. Yeah. Gary Shemano telling stories of Willie Mays. Again, the family that Willie once called the best friends that he had in his life. So yeah, Gary, take all the time you need, my friend.
So we go out to the ballpark that night, and Willie hit 3 home runs.
Wow!
And whether it was luck or he destined, or he really concentrated a little extra for the memory of my grandmother. And so, during spring training, at one time the Giants went to Palm Springs, and so my dad and mom would go down there and hang out with them down there. And then they went over to Phoenix, I think. But he became my buddy, and I was a young kid, and I went to USC. Who went to USC? Mark, you did?
No, that's our producer, Lucas.
Our producer did.
Fight on, Gary.
Lucas, okay.
I used to broadcast for them. That's as close as I got.
Lucas will know this. I was living in an athletic dorm. I played golf for USC. And I was in the dorm, and one day there was a knock on my dorm room. As the story goes, Willie walked into the dorm unannounced. I didn't know. He was playing the Dodgers. And he walks into the dorm. He said, "Where's Gary? Where's Gary?" "Upstairs, room 207. There's, 30, 40 kids having lunch when he walked in. They all follow him upstairs. He knocks on my door. I was taking a nap. I mean, what do you do in college?
Right.
So I opened the door. He says, "What you doing?" I said, "I'm taking a nap." He says, "Put some clothes on. Let's get out of here. Let's go shopping." So we go downtown L.A., we go to the apparel mart, the gift mart, everybody's giving Willie everything. Of course, I'm schlepping, carrying everything out. and it was a scene. So I became a hero of Mark's Hall at USC. And as the word spread, this was in the pinnacle of Willie's career. We went to the Dodger game and just had a ball.
Yeah, Gary, I'm trying to picture this. I mean, at the height of his career, the greatest ball player of all time is living at your house. He's showing up at your dorm. I got to think the world looked at you completely like, who is this guy? The greatest ball player in the world is just showing up everywhere he goes.
Well, I never told anybody, the story about what my father was doing for him, but they all knew that there was a relationship of some sort. It was one of the highlights for me, which I'd always go to the games and I'd call Willie before the game and say, "Hey, Willie, I'm bringing Susan to the game tonight. Can you do what you normally do for me?" What was that? He'd sign a baseball. It'd say, "To Susan, Gary's friend, best wishes, Willie Mays." And he'd come out of the dugout, when they run out onto the field, and then we had our box was right by the field on the first base side because that's where the dugout was in those days. And he lobbed the ball up to me. I got it and gave it to the girl. And there it was. She got her own ball dedicated by Willie Mays. Every time I had a date to go to the game, Willie came through.
That's so strong. I mean, I can imagine you scoring almost as often as Willie Mays, but there's a joke there that will be told off the air.
No, I never even got to first base with these girls. I couldn't score with a fistful of hundreds, but it was really fun. It really was.
You and I cut from the same cloth. Gary Shemano, family friend of Willie Mays here on 95.7 The Game. Can you just give us some insight as to what Willie meant to the Jewish community? I know that you are Jewish, and Mark, I know, is from a Jewish household, as is Lucas, and my wife is Jewish, so it means a lot to those of us here on the show. But he did more than just ingratiate himself into your family.
Well, there were so many charitable events that my father was active in. Not that we were a wealthy family, but my father believed if you couldn't give money, you had to give time. And so he took Willie around, and one day he took Willie to the Jewish Home for the Aged. And he walked there, and Willie was tremendously touched by the experience. And from that time on, not frequently, but every once in a while, he'd show up unannounced at the Jewish Home for the Aged and walk around and talk to people. And, it's interesting. I'm thinking here right now, I don't think we ever talked about religion or anything like that. He just knew where our interests lied. And he just became a member of the Shemano synagogue.
Gary, I wonder, and maybe you touched on it when you were talking about walking into the Giants clubhouse for the first time and who was nice to you and who wasn't. But when you look back on his life, the experience you and your family had with him and who he was, what sort of is the most surprising quality of Willie Mays?
His humbleness. I would say he was humble. He never talked about his exploits. He was just I guess he was kind of shy at times in social situations, but when he loosened up, he was always laughing. He's always having a good time. I don't think I ever saw. Only time I ever saw Willie get upset was during a game, and he slid into second base to break up a double play, and Jose Pagan was, I think, the second baseman or the shortstop. Anyway, Jose Pagan thought Willie was trying to spike him and started to attack Willie. And Willie was really strong. I mean, he never went to a gym, but he had a body that only God could give somebody. He picked up Jose Pagan and bounced him on the bag at second base. That's the only time I ever saw Willie get upset.
Man, at 5'11" of all business, I would not want to tangle with him at any of the relative basis. How much do you think, Gary, that it was just kind of pure serendipity that your father and Willie found each other? Your father, somebody who had done so much by hiring black tellers for the bank and so much of what he went through, as you mentioned before, in his childhood, and Willie and everything he overcame in Alabama. And these two men found each other at the perfect time. Do you think about those moments now as we reflect on Willie's life at 93?
Destiny acts in many funny ways. And, you know, when I look back, it was just, if I didn't go to pitch batting practice, I doubt my dad would have ever met Willie. But my dad, it was good for my dad. It was good for the bank. They both really helped each other. My father gave Willie an office in the bank at 130 Montgomery Street. It was a glass enclosure in the lobby because my dad didn't believe being in an upstairs office. He wanted to see customers. He wanted to see what was going on. And so Willie would come in whenever, and he'd sit around. Of course, everybody came in. Everybody wanted a baseball. My dad used to keep probably 200-300 baseballs in his drawer. And, so that was good for the bank. It became Willie Mays Bank. And then Willie brought in, other celebrities to bank at Golden Gate National Bank. It was just deja vu, I guess, to say. I never really thought about that. But, I didn't mention, but he had an exceptional relationship with my brother, Richard, Richie, as we called him. And my brother was a big guy. And he and Willie hit it off. And when Willie learned how to play golf, they used to go out and play golf. It was really a funny story. I'm digressing. I'm moving around. I hope that's okay with you guys.
We
Totally
love
okay.
digressions. Yeah.
Totally. We've got all the time in the world.
So, we were playing golf, and I started to play golf at Lincoln Park, walking around with my father and brother, and my mother took it up in self-defense. And then at an early age, I think I was 11, my dad joined a club called Lake Merced, golf club in Daly City. It was one of the only clubs in the area that we would not have a problem becoming a member of. And as Groucho Marx said, why be a member of a club that doesn't want you as a member? And so we joined a club that did want us as a member. And so we're out there, and I was very close friends with George Archer, who won the Masters. I don't, if you're up to date on golf.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And so I called George up. My dad handled George's affairs as well, who has the greatest wife, and still does. Of course, George passed away, but his wife is just tremendous. Anyway, we go out to the driving range at Lake Merced. We pick up Willie. We go out to the range, give Willie, tee it up, give him a driver. He starts taking a swing at, can't hit it. I'm telling you, he struck out probably 10 times.
Wow.
Never, ever touched the ball. And he turns to Archer and my dad. He says, how come this is so hard when the ball's not moving?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, how's it possible, Gary? How's Willie with that athleticism? I mean, he didn't have to be great, but how could he? I don't even understand. How could he not be better at golf?
I can't tell you that. But he progressed. He became a great putter. What touch he had. In those days, they had what was called billiard halls in San Francisco as social places to go. Country Club Billiards on Van Ness, right across the kitty corner to the House of Prime Rib. And Willie would say, let's go play some pool. And we'd get there, and they want to put us in a back room. Willie said, no, I want to play out here. All the kids wanted to play pool with Willie. And he was just so great to the kids. I remember going out to Candlestick with him one time, and there were some kids standing on a bus stop going to the game. He picked them up. All of us, he took us all to the game. He loved kids. He just got a kick out of it, and they used to kid each other. It was great. One day at the game, he really liked my brother. My brother's been gone almost, I guess, 20 years now. We go to the game, and prior to the game, at infield, Willie and a lot of guys came in, and they were in the infield, fooling around, playing. Willie used to play first base when they came in. And anyway, my brother's walking into the game or walking down the aisle to our box, and Willie sees Richie from first base, long way. This is not when it was close to the stands. He says, hey, Rich. "Hey, Rich," he takes the ball, he throws it all the way. Oh, could have killed somebody. He hit my brother. Could have hit my brother in the stomach. I swear to God. I mean, just that was Willie. You never knew what he was going to do.
We're talking with Gary Shemano here on 95.7 The Game and Willard and Dibs. Gary and his family, best friends with Willie Mays. Gary's dad was Willie's financial advisor. They took Willie in, helped him through some hard times. Out of it, a lifelong friendship was born and stayed. Gary, when was the last time you talked to him?
Well, Willie's been in bad shape for several years. I do want to mention somebody who's an angel. She had a caretaker that devoted her life to Willie for many years. I would say, God, it's got to be 10 years at least, maybe probably more. Her name is Renee Anderson. This woman lived for Willie, took care of him. And as Willie got and started to lose his senses couple, 2, 3, 4 years ago, it became difficult. But Renee was his quarterback and his front person. And when I would go down to see Willie as he progressed in this terrible disease, she would say, Willie only has an interest in the past. He can't reference the current. And so I would go down to see him, and in his office, he's got all these trophies and pictures and everything. This was maybe 6 months, a year ago. It was a difficult time. And in his office, there's a picture of my family hanging on his wall, 2 of them. And I was shocked because after all those years, my dad had been gone and all that stuff, he still had these pictures up. It really was a special thing. And, it was a very difficult time. And so Renee would always keep me posted. We were supposed to, I would guess 3-4 years ago, I called up Larry Bear, and I said, is it possible that I could come out with my family and have a picture taken with Willie on the mound? And Larry Bear owed me a favor. I don't know if he ever paid me back or not.
Wow.
But when Larry Bear graduated from Cal, his first job was the general manager of the San Francisco Pioneers. You guys don't know that. But my partner, Marshall Geller, at the time decided that they were forming the first women's professional basketball league. And Willie loved to go to the games. And so we bought the franchise, and Jimmy Carter was the president and decided to boycott the Olympics, which was going to highlight women's basketball, and never happened. And so the league never survived. Today it's doing great, but I forget what your question was.
Well, I just asked you when the last time you spoke to her.
Oh, yeah, I would say 6 months. Willie was in a facility, and so Renee was always the clue as to what I should do or could do.
Yeah, Gary Shemano, family friend, one of the closest friends of Willie Mays here on 95.7 The Game. One more from me, Gary, just wondering what Willie was thinking about the Rickwood game and a game being played today in his honor, and whether or not he understood and was aware of just how impactful this day was in honor of him.
I don't think so. I really don't. I know from other people how the memories. He turned pro at 13 playing baseball. He had to lie about his age, and that field meant a lot to him. But I never discussed it with him. I don't know what his involvement was, but I can tell you for sure that Major League Baseball wanted Willie to attend this, monumental event. I think it's tonight, and unfortunately, Willie's watching it from heaven.
Gary, that's interesting. He had to lie about his age. We've been sitting here saying that he started it at Rickwood at age 17. Is that not the case?
No, 13. He had to lie about his age to be able to play. it was a funny story when he used to tell it. He had to go out and pretend that he was older. He just was a quiet kid, but he could run with the wind, and so that was his beginning. He had such a fantastic athletic ability, and as a local story, we were members of the Concordia Argonaut Club, which was a Jewish men's social club. Not men's, it was just a Jewish social club on Van Ness Boulevard, of which Willie became a member. And he used to not work out, but he'd go down there. Anyway, Thanksgiving, a fellow named Mike Garrett, Lucas probably remembers him, Mike Garrett.
Sure.
The USC athletic director.
And not only athletic director, but a Heisman Trophy winner. Yes.
Right. We roomed together in L.A. for a year. And I said, come on up for Thanksgiving. So he comes up. I called Willie, and I said, let's go down to Concordia Club and play a little basketball. And I got Bob Lee, who was a quarterback from Minnesota, who went to Lowell High School with me. He was a great football player and a very successful man, great guy, still around, kicking, pretty good golfer, too. Anyway, we go down and play, and got a couple other guys. But I'll tell you, he and Mike Garrett were going at it. And Mike was maybe 5'10", maybe. And Willie wasn't too much taller. But I'll tell you, the rest of us just stood on the side of the court and watched them go at it. And they were both so competitive, but it was fun. So we went to the Concordia Club and experienced that a few times.
Gary,
go ahead. I want to add one story, if I may.
Please.
What a guy he was. I was the president of Lowell High School when they just moved out to by Stonestown, in the new school. We were used to be at Hayes and Masonic, and the school closed, became an adult school, and then we moved out there to by Stonestown. And we had a pretty good football team. The star of our team was a fellow named Tim McAteer, whose father was a senator and a power to be, and Tim was maybe one of the great athletes out of San Francisco. I hope he listens to this. And so we had a rally. We were in Turkey Day, which is what they used to call the championship football game in San Francisco, high school football. And I played football, but Tim was the star. And unannounced, we have this rally going on in the courtyard for the game. And who walks in? Willie Mays. And there's a picture in the article, I believe. I'm 18 or 19, and I'm talking to all my students, all my colleagues, my friends, the Lowellites. And Willie comes over, puts his arm around me, says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Willie, we got this big game tonight." He said, "Well, tell me about it." And he's kidding me. And then he grabs the wallet out of my back pocket. I posted a lot of this stuff on Facebook recently since he passed away. So many people that I went to school with have written me and said, "Geez, I remember that day and we'll never forget it."
Wow.
It was a special day.
You went to Lowell with my uncle Dan Giles, as a matter of fact. Old Lowell.
That's old Lowell. My brother went to Lowell. I was there 3.5 years and then went to Lowell, the new Lowell.
Yeah, wow.
And it was, it was. There's so many of these things that I can talk about.
Gary, what? One other thing, you mentioned that he was 13 when he actually got his pro career started. Did that ever catch up and correct itself? Or what was he 93?
Yeah. I can't say that. I don't know. All I can tell you is that he told me he was 13.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was such a great athlete, though.
Right.
But, I'll tell you a story because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My dad always wanted to be in the banking business, but that business was closed to people like my family.
Right.
And my dad attended high school with a fellow named Pierre Salinger, who became President Kennedy's press guy, and my dad went back. He was appointed to public housing to develop public housing in San Francisco by Mayor Shelley. And it was a non-paid position, but my dad wanted to try to do something. And so he had told Pierre about his problem. He just couldn't get a California charter for a bank. So Pierre asked him, he said, Jake, can I tell the president about this? Of course, my dad was a Russian immigrant, came to America when he was 2, and this is a really funny story. So he goes back and tells Pierre about it, and comes back home. A couple of weeks later, the phone rings in the house. I answer it, and a lady says, is this Mr. Shemano? I said, no, this is his son. He says, is Mr. Shemano there? I said, yes, may I tell him who's calling? He said, yes, the White House. I said, Dad, I don't want to swear on the radio, but I said, Dad, this is BS. There's somebody on the phone who says they're calling from the White House. Well, it was President Kennedy. And
wow.
He said to my dad, he called him Jack, not Jake. He said, he says, I want you to come back to Washington, bring your attorney, work it out with Pierre. So he went back to Washington, met with the president. The president asked him 2 or 3 questions. He says, 1, Jake, a charter to a national bank is very valuable. Can I have your word you're not going to sell it? Absolutely. He says, can I have your word that you're going to cater to those people who do need loans, those people who need a break? Absolutely. That was my dad anyway. And in that respect, my dad came back and was the first bank to hire black tellers. And it was, and also being open on Saturdays, because he thought the working man had a difficult time going to the bank during the week.
Yeah.
So, Saturday was a good day. And so that, they once again broke the barrier. And it was a special thing. I remember my dad got really upset one day. As my brother told me, because my brother worked in the bank, I didn't. That somebody said something unkind to one of the black tellers. Unkind would be a nice way of putting it.
Sure.
And the poor teller, young lady, just really lost it emotionally. And my dad ran out of the office, went behind the teller line, and one of the other tellers says to the woman, geez, I know exactly what you're going through. I really feel for you. My father looks at this woman and says, you don't have an idea. Your skin's not black. You can go wherever you want. She can't. And he took the girl into his office, relaxed her, and then made her the head of the tellers. And that was typical of Golden Gate National Bank. He got the charter, by the way. He got a national charter.
Yeah, I bet. Gary, my goodness. First of all, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of these stories. It's wonderful to make your acquaintance. 1 to 1, 2 to 1, and again, we extend our heartfelt condolences. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
I want to conclude with this, if I may.
Sure.
People want to know why Willie was called Say Hey. Well, Willie didn't. So many people came up to say hello, he couldn't remember everybody's name. So he'd say Hey, how you doing? When I lived with Mike Garrett at USC. Kind of the same thing. And all the kids would come up and, how you doing, Mike? He'd say, how you doing, baby? So that was his say, hey. Jared would say, how you doing, baby?
Nice.
Anyway, you guys, I listen to you guys. My son listens to you almost every day. And he's got 2 kids, Sam and Max, who are great athletes in Marin County.
Oh.
So, when I told him at dinner Sunday night that I was honored to be asked to be on your show, he says, well, tell Dibley he cannot referee a game.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Gary, this has been a lovely conversation, and I feel like we're friends now. You tell your son to tell his kids, quit reaching, stop camping in the key, because I'm watching them.
Yeah, I have a son, Ben, and another one, Jake, who is named after his dad. They're both great kids. I'm so fortunate. I'm the luckiest guy on the planet.
Yeah.
Well, and Gary, also just as an aside, you know, our audience knows my friendship with Aaron Oberholzer, who was a great golfer and now with the Golf Channel, and you had a huge hand in helping start his career, and so I want to thank you for that too, because he means a lot to me. Just thank you for all of this.
Well, you know, two of us sponsored Aaron.
Yes.
George Roberts and myself. I don't know if you know who Mr. Roberts is.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And it's the only guy I ever sponsored where I got my money back.
Well, then maybe no thanks needed. But anyway, perfect. Gary.
Thank you.
Wonderful to talk to you.
Anytime. Thank you.